Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our second session of the How to Launch a B2B SaaS Startup Virtual Summit. My name is George Soto, or Jorge Soto. I'll tell you that story another day. I get the question every day. I am super excited to be joined by some rock star investor, practitioners, founders. Well, all of you have been on operators. I know that David has moved into the investment sort of world at this point, but why don't we take a quick second to introduce ourselves? By the way, for the audience, if you do have any questions, go ahead and post them in the chat or click on the Ask a Question button, which is right here at the bottom. If you do that, that's kind of a cool functionality, but go ahead and post it in the chat. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how'd you actually start building products as well?
For sure, yeah, and thank you so much, George, for organizing this and getting us all together. Yeah, really happy and grateful to be here. My name is Matt Hubert. I am one of the co-founders of Bitmatica. We are a software consultancy, and we help companies build digital products. So do it all day, every day. We work with organizations like Capital One, Autodesk, Stanford, Maersk, large banks, public governments, and small startups, everyone in between. And my love and our love is just teaching people and getting in the weeds and building the products that are going to work. That's me.
Cool. David, why don't you kick it off?
Thanks, George.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks, George. I am managing director of Azul Partners. I've been working with a founder, Ted Rubin, who's a serial entrepreneur who has built and sold companies in the auto tech space. That's where I got a lot of my experience. He built a company that I helped him found that was sold to JM Family. And that was all really direct to dealerships and OEMs where they had a DMS system. And then his latest was Active Engage, which is a company that does digital retailing for automotive, but a lot of the customers are large OEMs and large enterprise businesses. So a lot of what I've seen is sort of on the front line of that over many years. And I started Azul Partners a few years ago with some incredible partners of mine that I worked at Anderson with. And we really focus on enterprise software, and we like deep tech. We like technology, and that's where we focus. So I'm glad that I can participate today and hopefully share something I know that's relevant. Thank you.
Awesome. Sergio, introduce yourself. Also, tell us about your story, how you came from Cuba. Being here in Miami, that means a lot to us here. And certainly me, my dad's Cuban. But tell us a little bit about your background. And if you can, just a little bit about how you got here, because I think the story is super awesome.
Sure. So my name is Sergio Leon. I'm born and raised in Cuba. I come from a background in education and in building SaaS products for 10 plus years. I founded a company in Cuba with 3 other partners, and we built what we didn't know at the moment that it was, but it was basically a clone of Eventbrite. The funny thing is we did this without internet, with a bunch of alternative ways to distribute content. If you followed the evolution of the internet in Cuba, the name El Paquete might come to mind. So we did it all. We found all the ways that we could distribute, and we did. And at the height of it, we had 8,000 monthly active users, which is big for that space. I moved to Miami in 2016 amid a big push for entrepreneurship. It was big at the moment. A lot of VC was coming to Miami, and I just loved it. I took a break from founding and building stuff and went to work at corporate America for about 4 years. And I founded the company that I'm with right now with 4 other partners. It's called One Nature Graphics, and we are minority, Black, and women owned and operated. And what we do is bridge the gap between the physical world and physical media advertising and business operating software and digital marketing, especially for small businesses in the Miami area.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much. And also, if you're ever interested in Sergio's story of how he actually got here through the program, Roots of Hope is really cool. Shout out to Raul,
Yes.
who was running it now. Now he's over at the Knight Foundation here in Miami. Matt, why the hell should we do an MVP? I know we've talked about this and we've worked on MVPs before, you and I, in the past. We started a company together a couple of years ago. But yeah, what is an MVP and why the hell does it matter? Like, why can't I just go ahead and build, the idea that I have and all those bells and whistles?
Because you're broke.
That's a good one.
Right? That's why, because you don't have a lot of money. And you need answers fast. That's why you got to build an MVP. So yeah, an MVP, I think for most people that know, stands for a minimum viable product. There are other kind of fun ways of saying it: minimum sellable product, which I think we're going to talk about today, minimum lovable product. But they all kind of mean the exact same thing. And it's about trying to find the intersection between the smallest thing you can build as quickly as absolutely possible that users will actually use and ultimately pay for, because time is money and we don't have a lot of either of those things, especially when you're an early stage founder. If you're self-funded, you're just getting started, you need to get those answers fast before you get out of cash.
And why does that matter? Like, why can't, if I did have money, let's just say, or, maybe I did have some funding, which, being where we lived for a long time in Silicon Valley, you had these massive valuations and people raising money on a napkin. So why do I care?
Yeah, it's because I think a lot of people have this idea in their head that their idea is what's going to work in the marketplace. And I think what people and entrepreneurs learn very, very quickly is the minute you start talking to customers, every idea that you have probably is missing something. It's either a little bit off the mark or it's entirely off the mark. And that's because it's really hard to know until you start to talk to people. So, and we'll talk about, I think, product market fit here in a second, and a little bit. But the idea is, as an entrepreneur and a founder, you could have all the money in the world, but sometimes that won't necessarily get you to build something that people love. And so our job as founders and entrepreneurs is think about what problems we are solving in the marketplace, what problems are people going to pay us money to ultimately solve, this minimum sellable product idea, and how can we do it as efficiently as possible. So it's about the value and the need.
David, I know you were founding CFO for a couple B2B businesses in the past, some that have become very, very, very successful. And do you agree with Matt? And then if you do or don't, why? And why does it matter? And how do I actually figure out what the heck that MVP is?
Yeah, Matt makes a great point. I mean, I think he hit the nail on the head. What's interesting is that, we see a lot of ideas all day long. And even companies that have been in the business of selling products for a while, that are innovating and developing new products, feel like they have good ideas for the customers. But you really don't know until you get that product in front of the customer. And even when you get it in front of the customer, there's another layer, which is whether it works. So whether it works for the customer. So I've been involved in I guess I'm fortunate. I've been around a very innovative founder who never stops continually developing new products for the customers. And the idea that you have an MVP on day one in pure startup, right, was very well described by Matt. And I think that as you grow and you develop new products, you kind of have to have the same mentality. You can't assume that, okay, now I have it. So it's better to make a quick MVP, minimum viable product, that you can put in front of the customer, test out all of your theories that seemed like good ideas, and figure out what's missing. In most cases, something is missing, or the customer also goes through a discovery process by using the MVP. And that's often missed. So by letting the customer use an MVP fast or relatively fast, that's different for each business, you then are having them help you iterate and actually help you get to a product that they're going to find most useful.
Got it. Thank you so much. Sergio, first of all, what's your take on this topic?
Well, I totally agree with Matt and David. What I would add is, even if you're not self-funding, even if you're not bootstrapping, if you've raised some money, some seed capital, your investment partner is going to want to see results. And the time and effort that goes into building a product, especially a SaaS product, can be significant. So it's in the best interest of your users or prospective users, yourself, your partners, and your funders, that you build something that you can put in front of users fast, get feedback, and course correct if need be. So that's going to be key for anybody at whatever level of funding you are.
Okay, Sergio, let's talk about tactical, right? What's that process? Because we just were on a walk the other day, and you were like, bro, I just went through this whole process. It's taken such a long time, but we finally are starting to see some kind of like correlations, trends, and things that people like. So what would you say are some of these steps that if someone is out there, one of these folks sitting there in the crowd, and they're trying to figure out how to build this MVP and get to that, what we would consider sales ready, what are some, let's say, 2 or 3 early steps just from 0 to 3?
Well, let me preface this first by saying there is no one way to build a SaaS product. There are many ways. Your experience or your lack thereof, or your partners, will take you down a road that makes the most sense for you. If you're coming from experience, you might be used to building things a certain way. What we have found in many, many years of building SaaS products is there's usually a big disconnect between what a founder thinks that a minimum viable product should be and what the market thinks that be. So my advice is always find something that you feel like you can put your whole weight, your whole mind and body behind, build it as fast as you can, and then put it out there, gather feedback, and be agile in taking action upon that feedback. So you're going to find that there's a mix between what the founders think that should go be in the MVP and what the market's going to start telling you as soon as you put it out there.
And Matt, let's say you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I think it's going to be this. I've heard from the 5 companies here. You remember when we were building DashTap, it was like contacts and accounts. You remember? And then we were like, what do we do, right? We have a certain period of time and resources to kind of try to figure this thing out. How do you prioritize that? How do you know what to focus on? How do you know it's just not BS from users you're talking to?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I've thought about this a lot, and it's tough because people hate to hear this, but I think the true answer to this is it's a bit of an art. It is a bit of an art to understand what's noise and what's signal. People are asking you for 1,000 things, contacts and accounts, this, that, people are asking for features. And I actually tried to put together, while it's, there's no one formula. And I think, Sergio said it best, there's no one way to build a SaaS app, right? There are 1,000 ways to do it. I put together a little list of what I think are good metrics, and there are metrics I use, we've used, in the past. And I think to think about how you want to weight each thing across all these metrics, and I'm going to toss them out really quick. Features that you discover either through interviews or you come up with, or wherever they come up with, that affect new engagement, existing retention. So does it keep people on the product? Product user confusion. So sure, you add it, but does it mess up the product a little bit? Vision, does it sit with your overall product vision? Revenue, of course, is going to make you money. Competitive advantage, how does it affect the marketplace? Business risk, are there elements to this feature that are going to introduce risk to the product in that way? And then, of course, technical risk, cost, and time. How long is this going to take to build, and how much it's going to cost me? So I think it's up to everybody to figure out how they want to weight those things, but I think those are all different areas to consider, I would say.
David, we have a question from Tony Yang out there, and the question is, what are some options for non-technical founders who have a great idea, of course, what they think is a great idea, but don't have a technical co-founder to help them build an MVP?
Yeah, great question. First, make sure the idea is good with the customer, right? And then make sure at least there's an idea of a need for that. But I love the question for a couple of reasons. One of them is that, in my view, and not everyone agrees with me, the building of an MVP these days, recently, is done by the developers. So you have to have that technical piece, obviously, from a building software standpoint. But I think that the knowledge that a developer has, and when developers are looking at what's needed in the market, looking at features, they can not only tell you what they think should be a part of the MVP, but I think just as critically, I've seen this play out where they will give you guidelines of what should not be part of it. And that's critical, because you literally will get jerked around by the so-called customer relationship or whoever's giving you guidance, like you guys just described, and they will never stop saying what they want. Can you do this? Can you do this? It almost never ends. So involving a developers, could be multiple developers, very early on, and finding that co-founder very early on, I think is critical.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, by the way, I want to introduce Rosa Jimenez Cano, who I've known for many, many years. Rosa was a correspondent, the main correspondent for El País in Silicon Valley, which is where we met. And so Rosa was in charge of interviewing, no big deal, like the head of CEO of Google and Twitter and stuff like that. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Rosa. However, David, I just want to tell you, I've been through this 1,000 times. My first web startup in 04, 05, my co-founder was technical. I didn't know that he couldn't actually code because he was an electrical engineer. We were building a consumer Web 2.0 community. So we outsourced it, and we threw in maybe about $200K in the thing just to build out what we thought was the MVP. And by that time, we were at zero, and nobody even cared, right? So it totally makes sense. Yeah. I have never done another startup I can think of, at least right now, without making sure that I had someone that could code on the team. That didn't guarantee success by any means, but at least it made sense. Rosita,
may I toss in one thing to this question, actually, briefly?
Yeah.
Because there's something that we do that to answer the question as well. The power of the whiteboard marker. And George, you know this because we did it. It's incredible how much you can validate without code. And there's a little bit of a false sort of, process. People think, okay, you have an idea, you want to build it, so build it first, then show users. That is backward and it's inefficient. Draw it out on a whiteboard, draw it out on a napkin, get a designer to design a screen, put that in front of a user, and it is amazing how much feedback you can get, how much time and money you can save validating whiteboard sketches, which you can do. You don't need a co-founder for that. You want someone who's technical to validate, a lot of that, but there's so much you can do at first just with a pen. So just wanted to add that.
And if I may, I would also like to offer an alternative view, which is lately, the last 10, 15 years or so, there's been a huge boost of tools called no code or low code. And for a non-technical founder, and I had to say this because this is something that we carry in our hearts every day and things we do. These tools are a great way to validate or to build something with point and click interfaces that do not require a founder or a co-founder that is technical, and are a great way to put a high fidelity mockup or a minimal working thing in front of users, get them using them, and gather feedback in the most efficient way. And the other thing that I like about tools like this is that they let founders or builders, whether they're technical or not, iterate really fast. So using tools like these, there's a bunch of examples. Shopify for e-commerce, you've got Wix for websites, and so many others are a great first step to go out there, make your idea a reality without having to find someone who's technical, validate the idea, and then when you've validated it, you're going to be in a much better position to go and find someone who's technical to build it with you or for you.
Awesome.
Good. So I think it's my turn. Thank you, Jorge, for inviting me. I'm sorry for being late. Just for the record, I think I was lucky because I was the only one in Spanish. So I was the first one, the only one, and a woman, and in tech. So I think I expanded and got at the space, and I was very lucky to get all the things there. So I wanted to go very quick. Usually in little startups, decision making is not that easy. So who do you think decides the MVP roadmap, the features? Which would be the sweet spot or find the balance between your roadmap and what you see users or customers are asking you to do?
David, why don't you go kind of give us your opinion, because you've seen it go the distance to the billions.
Yeah, I've seen it full cycle, and in my experience and what I've seen, and it's just one view, I think you need guardrails in terms of roadmap. Roadmap early on is really, really difficult in terms of how you want to set the parameters. So it comes down to focus in many ways. So if that roadmap is focused on one product and one core need, I think that you're going to have a better chance of getting to a product where you can start to assess, an MVP at least, where you can start to assess the product market fit. So for me, it starts with the guardrails, and I think it also requires focus in regards to how you ask the question.
Got it. Awesome. What would you say these how do you figure out what these guardrails are? Are these like a set of rules? Sergio, what would you say? I know you've, again, been going through this for a while, and then particularly now you're starting to see a lot of success.
Mm-hmm. So as we were talking the other day, when we were hatching out these questions, oftentimes when you're building a product, the right thing to be asking yourself is not what should it be, but what should it not be? And making it clear that you're going to limit the complexity of the thing you're building, and you're going to limit the scope. Focusing on one thing or a few things does wonders for the effectiveness and the efficiency of building a product. So what we've seen, for example, is that we would launch with a core set of features, put it in front of users and partners, get their feedback, and then oftentimes you're going to find that some of those features are right spot on, and we've talked about this today, some others are going to need iteration. So what I'd say is it's always going to be a mix between something that you believe deeply in, or your team believes deeply in, and what the market's going to tell you. There's no magic formula there, but I think that those metrics that Matt gave are right spot on for finding that balance.
We have a question from the audience, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. Again, thank you so much for your time, everyone. The question from the audience is from Lara, is what are the best practices to promote agile methodologies and MVPs, and at the same time follow a finite timeline? It's kind of in line with what we've been talking about here. Oftentimes clients feel that the fact that we work with MVPs allows for infinite changes and added features. Matt, I know you're kind of doing this every day for third-party clients. What's your take on this?
Yeah, great question. And I think it sounds like that's being said from a fellow consultant. So I feel you. I think part of it is, so number one, using the word guardrails to bring that up, which is a really good point. It's also putting guardrails on your client. If we're talking about building this for a client, now you're actually a little sort of thing that people forget about doing this as a third party and doing it for both a client and their customers is you're actually doing this for two people at once. You are building a product for your client and you're building a product for your client's customers, and they're actually different, and oftentimes they have no relationship between the two, even though they really should. And so it's really important to set guardrails on both of those and say to your client, listen, this is what we're going to do. We plan it out in time. So we will book an MVP contract for, say, 12 weeks. We say, you're going to pay us for 12 weeks. We'll be here for 12 weeks. We can do whatever we like in those 12 weeks, but on week 13, that's the beginning of something new. So we set it in terms of time, less about features, and that keeps our clients usually pretty honest. And they look at the calendar, they know when, we're going to run up against that.
Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like we're coming up on time here. David, we'll start with you as we wrap up. Any final, feedback or suggestions for the audience around building an MVP that is sales ready? And then lastly, how do we know it's sales ready? What's that kind of aha moment? Is it as simple as, oh, they'll pay? Because I know as a CFO, just when they'll pay something doesn't really mean that it's sales ready.
Yeah, usually I say the ultimate proof of concept is whether someone will pay for it. That's the easiest proof of concept, right? But some of it is tactical, and some of it depends on the relationships you have. So if you have a paid pilot, for example, that's a great milestone. If you do it for free continually, I would advise against that. I'd say it's worth investing the time in relationships to figure out where, if anywhere, you can have a breakthrough where someone is willing to give you a shot and do a paid pilot. That's kind of the lowest hanging fruit. But the one key thing I would say is establish metrics early with that relationship, and ask the question multiple times, and maybe even whiteboard it out, which is a great idea. What are the metrics of success? What does success look like? How do I know if I won? Because if you're not establishing that early, you could literally get lost in the process forever. So I think
awesome.
that would be the one kind of thing that would be something to try to establish early on.
Thank you. Free doesn't mean MVP, folks, or sales ready, certainly. David, real quick, if folks want to reach out to you, maybe there's some SaaS founders out there that have some great ideas and maybe want to send you a deck or something. What's the best way to get in touch with you? And what is the profile of founder or team that you're looking for, or maybe even stage?
I'd love it. So thank you. By the way, LinkedIn, email, even on our website, I have an email. You can pretty much reach me 24/7. That's kind of the joke. But if you ask what our strategy is, we invest. Where we pull the trigger on investments is really seed to Series A. So we do look for that proof of concept, right? Pre-seed, sometimes you can get away with a great idea. And we're looking for either paid pilot or revenue. So at least it gets to the point where we can make an assessment and then try to help you. We get significantly involved in the company as well. But yeah, we look at anything. We'll pretty much look at anything. So we're wide open.
Cool. In 60 seconds, Sergio, any final feedback around MVP, sales ready? And then if folks want to learn more about your products or learn more about or get in contact with you to learn more from you, having done this for a decade, go for it.
So a key point that I ask myself every time about a product is this a painkiller or a vitamin? Is it a product that's going to solve a pain for the customer and then build with that in mind? Or is it a product that's going to make something easier or prettier or more effective and build with that in mind? If you ask yourself that first, you're going to be much closer to what your end user is going to feel. I can be found on every social media at Cuban Sandwich Without Vowels. So that is CBNSNDWCH. That's going to be Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Clubhouse, everywhere. You search Cuban sandwich Miami Sergio, and you're gonna find me. Shout me out, tweet at me. I'd love to hear what you guys are building, and offer advice if I can.
Awesome. And Matt, in 30 seconds, any final thoughts on MVP, best practices, and how can people get in contact with you or learn more about what you're doing?
Listen to your customers, and just pay attention to what they're saying. Think of sales ready as finding fissures in the earth, right? It's hard to find the need, but once you find the need, if you've truly done and found something that people really, really, really need, they will ultimately pay for it. You have to get there. I wouldn't worry about that part. I'd worry about building something that people want first, and the rest honestly will come. So,
awesome. Thank you so much for volunteering your time tonight. Very much appreciate it. Rosa and I are super excited about just everything that all of you have been doing in your communities. And startups are the future for us. So very thankful. For everyone else, we're going to move on to session number 3. So number 1, you'll be teleported there. I'm going to teleport all of y'all there. So just hang tight.
Thanks, George. Love what you do.
Thank you, George.
Yes, of course. You can go ahead and click on the little schedule here at the top, folks, and then that'll take you to that next session. So thank you so much, David, Sergio, Matt, and hope to see you in person soon.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
George.
Thank you, George.
Take care.
Bye.